What's going on, everybody? Marcus back again. This is part 2 of the Marcus vlog of my jury duty saga. And this video, we're going to talk about jury deliberations. We're going to talk about the CSI effect. We're going to talk about the law. We're going to talk about jurors. We're going to talk about a lot of different things that came up in this jury deliberations, because this jury deliberation has changed my outlook on criminal justice. And this is coming from someone who's a prison guard, someone who's a political science major, and someone who has really been a student of law and crime and corrections for a very long time. And this experience has changed my life and changed my outlook on a lot of things. So we left off where we started deliberations. And as soon as we sat down, they asked us to pick a foreman. And we sit down, and one of the jurors who had been on like 5 juries before says, yeah, we should just hurry up and pick a foreman really quick. It's not that big of a deal. So who wants to be foreman? And like 3 seconds goes by and it's dead silent. And I just raised my hand. I said, I'll do it, because I just wanted it to be over. And I figured that this was such a slam dunk case in favor of the prosecution that let me just do it so it could be done correctly and get it over with. Which, by the way, I didn't mention in my last blog that I walked out of the closing arguments at the end of the trial, slam dunk guilty on both charges. I forgot to mention what both charges were on this DUI. So the defendant was charged with 2 counts. Count 1 was driving under the influence, and count 2 was driving a vehicle while testing positive with a 0.08 blood alcohol level or higher. So he was charged with 2 different counts. So I left thinking he was guilty on both counts. So we sit down in deliberations, we pick a foreman, and as soon as we decide that I'm the foreman, I say, okay, everybody, let's talk about the witnesses, because they told the story. And I started talking about the 911 caller, and almost immediately somebody said, yeah, that guy just seemed like he was mad that he got cut off, so I don't believe anything he said. And I'm just like, what? Like, this guy had no dog in the race. This thing happened a year ago. He was calm on the 911 call, so automatically there's conflict within 10 seconds. And then somebody mentioned that, oh, you know, count 1 doesn't really count. The blood test doesn't count for count 1, which the law actually states that if you find that someone popped for a blood test at 0.08, that you can find them guilty on count 1. And I mentioned that, and immediately this one lady, who you'll hear about for the rest of this video, stood up and said, don't misinterpret the law. I'm like, I'm not misinterpreting the law. I'm literally reading the law that was given to us. And I want to describe this lady. I call her Crazy Cat Lady because she looked like a crazy cat lady. She looked like she was at least 55 years old, but she looked older. But she wasn't that. Like, she had bags underneath her eyes, no wedding ring. She had long gray hair. She looked angry. She was just very, very combative within the first few minutes of deliberation. So we only had about 30 minutes to deliberate, but I left that 30 minutes of deliberation thinking this is not going to be good, because we took a preliminary vote, and the first vote was on charge 1, 10-2 guilty, and the second charge 8-4 not guilty. So we were hung. We were in favor of guilty, but we were hung right after the trial, which is common, but still. So the next day we come in, and the Crazy Cat Lady had decided to basically like say that she just has doubts about everything in this case. And the way she was making it seem like every little minute thing was just reasonable doubt. So I sat down and I pulled out the jury instructions and said, hey guys, I think we should read what reasonable doubt is. And the instructions that they gave us clearly stated that reasonable doubt is not a lack of all doubt, and it doesn't constitute the presence of minor doubt or imaginary doubt. So I read that part to her, and she immediately started getting combative with me, basically saying, you know, I don't care what that says. I have doubts about this case, and my doubts are reasonable. So I knew we were in trouble. This is going to be a long day, and it was a long day. So I said, okay, let's wind back and let's try and talk about the witnesses. So we go step by step to each witness. And I said, let me lead this, right? So we go through the 911 caller. There's dispute about his intentions. Then we get to the cop, and not one person believes the cop was lying. Cop smelled alcohol, tried the test. Everyone thought the cop was good. The criminal list is where we ran into a little bit of a problem. So like I said before in the first video, his alcohol content was tested 41 minutes after he was arrested. And he popped at a 0.13. The criminalist said that alcohol can dissipate at 0.02 per hour, so it's possible that it was higher. But it's also possible that he may have had a drink an hour before and then it finally got into his blood and rose up right when he took the test. But you said, oh, it's possible, right? It was just that one word. And that one word hung on Crazy Cat Lady and 2 other jurors. And this is why I want to talk about the CSI effect, because all 3 of those jurors insisted that without a test done immediately as he was arrested, they couldn't find him guilty. And I had to remind them, and other jurors did too, that, you know, this isn't CSI and we're not going to get perfect evidence, but we have beyond all reasonable doubt. And it just became a big fight. And we actually had to call the recorder to read back the cross-examination of the criminalist, because she was convinced that the criminalist had said something else. She got proven wrong and she got upset. So after, at about 11:30, we decide we take another vote. We're 11-1 guilty on count 1. And the only not guilty is Crazy Cat Lady. And then on count 2, which was the charge of, was he 0.08 or higher, we were hung at 9-3. 9 guilty, 3 not guilty. So at that point, I just decided we've deliberated for about 3 hours. Let's tell the judge. So we tell the judge, we get to the judge, and the judge sits us down, doesn't even talk to us. He just says, go back and deliberate more, change things up, try and talk about other things. So we get back into the deliberation room and we decide that why doesn't everyone just take their turn to speak? Every single juror speak up and say, why are you feeling the way you're feeling about your votes? Why are you guilty or not guilty on each charge? So everyone speaks their piece. Crazy Cat Lady goes on like a 15-minute tangent where, check this out. Because she felt that the 911 caller didn't quite describe reckless driving in a parking lot, that was not guilty for her. Well, he didn't prove that he was drunk. Well, he's a piece of that puzzle, right? That's what I tried to explain to her, that, hey, the 911 caller, the cop, the blood test, all of these things led to this. So if one witness is not credible to you, that doesn't mean the whole case is kibosh. Not every witness has to basically stand on their own. And yeah, so it became a big fight. And then I tried to stand up and explain that. And she basically said, the debate's over. I'm not guilty on that first count. So I just threw my hands up and said, okay, let's go tell the judge that we're hung because we've been back for 10 minutes and you say that we're done. So we actually got into a lot of conflict here. And at that point, it became clear that not only was she unreasonable about the blood evidence, but now she was unreasonable about driving under the influence, because we had the blood test, the cop's testimony, and the 911 caller's testimony that all led us into that direction. And there wasn't much doubt there. A blind man could have seen that. And that's what really upset me. It got me kind of upset. And it got me kind of worried that because as it stood, this guy was going to walk, and he popped a 0.13 on a blood test, and he's going to walk. But what we end up doing is after lunch, we come back and we decide that we want to read the direct examination again, because now Crazy Cat Lady thinks, oh, wait a minute. Didn't the criminalist say that red watery eyes may occur at 0.5 and may inhibit your driving? So we read back 30 minutes of the direct examination of the criminalist. And afterwards, at that point, I hadn't even looked at her. She was sitting about 3 seats away from me. I wasn't even looking at her. And then after all of this, I'm sitting there just kind of like I'm face palming, because I'm just like, we're listening to this testimony. And all of a sudden she just goes, Mr. Foreman, I'm conceding that he's guilty and he was under the influence after listening to the evidence again. And I said, okay, let's do a quick vote. So we did a quick vote and it was unanimous, count one guilty. So then we said, okay, let's do one more quick debate. Let's ask the 3 people that are not guilty on count 2 to explain themselves again and give us an opportunity to try and at least deliberate with you, because your 3 are the ones that are holding. If it's not, because they kind of agreed. They said, okay, well, if it's 9-3, then we're the ones that are on the fence. So we should be the ones that need to be swayed instead of 9 other people, because you're not going to sway 9 people. So one of the guys that was against the 0.08 charge, he was kind of meek. He probably said a dozen words the entire time in deliberation. He basically says, well, I'm not confident about 0.08 because it was taken 41 minutes afterwards. And the looks on everyone's faces is basically like, this guy's kind of not bright. We're not going to sway him. He's not worth it. We've got 2 other people that are much more confident. So we're just like, okay, let's move on. So there was another guy who was basically saying that he's 70% sure that he was at a 0.08 or higher when he got arrested, but he can't be sure enough to convict him. And I basically said, so you mean to tell me that you're banking on the fact that 1, he was absorbing alcohol and not eliminating alcohol, and 2, that he was able to absorb 0.5% alcohol in 41 minutes. Actually, 0.6 alcohol in 40. He was able to double his blood alcohol level at least in 41 minutes. And he's like, I can't be sure. And I'm like, okay, dude, like, it's already 3:00. We have to be done in an hour and a half. We're not going to deliberate again. One final vote, we're hung. So just like that, someone who tested positive for 0.13% blood alcohol level, which the limit's 0.08, 41 minutes after being pulled over, is now going to walk on that charge. And he almost walked on the first one, all because the criminalist said one word that it was possible that it was lower. That was it. And Crazy Cat Lady also went on another tangent about how I need more data and an instant test would have been nice. Funny that she should mention that. They offered him a breathalyzer right there at the spot. He refused. He also lied about not drinking that night. He says, I haven't had anything to drink tonight. I'm like, dude, you popped a 0.13. You had, the criminalist said to get a 0.13 that he would have had to have at least 6 drinks that night, considering he was like 160 pounds or something like that. So that's what's scary to me. And that's what I want to talk about right now is this world of precise science needed to be present in all crime literally cost us a conviction on one charge for this guy who was clearly like I have never seen a more slam dunk case in my life. When I saw the evidence, I'm like, what is this lawyer going to say that's going to sway me? At this point, I'm so far into guilty that it would take almost an act of God to say not guilty at that point. So I was a little disappointed, and I'm a little upset that, jurors are not capable of recognizing what reasonable doubt is, and they're not capable of understanding how science works, and they need precision science in order to, I guess, take it seriously. Like the science has to be so precise in order for them to believe it. They can't just accept that, hey, he popped a 0.13. He was drunk as a skunk, and we let him walk on one charge. So I'm a little upset, and a warning out there to all prosecutors, because one of the DAs came up to me and asked me, hey, what was the vote and why was it the vote? And I basically said what I'm saying now. I said that it was CSI effect. They wanted a precise number the second he was pulled over. That was the only way that he was going to get convicted. And that's a shame, because that's not the standard. And I wasn't prepared to try and fight that anymore, because it was too long. We almost deliberated longer than the trial. The trial only lasted 6 hours, and we deliberated for 5. And we spent, I think, an hour of that reading back testimony. So it was a very, very difficult experience to go through. And I don't mean for this video to be too long, and I appreciate you, anybody that's still listening to this. I don't want you to be dissuaded from serving on a jury, but I hope that if you do and you're watching this, just remember that science isn't precise. You're not going to get precise evidence, and understand what reasonable doubt is. In fact, look it up right now and start doing some of your own research as to what it is and what the standards are. Because Crazy Cat Lady was living in her own little bubble. She wasn't thinking. She was just like, well, there's a little bit of doubt there, so I'm sorry, but I have reasonable doubt. And I would ask her, what's reasonable? What about it is reasonable? Well, it's not precise. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, at that point, it's just like, what do you do? What do you do at that point? Nothing. You can't do anything. You can't help somebody that can't help themselves. So, a little disappointed, but we did get the guy on one charge. We convicted a drunk driver of driving under the influence. So that is a positive. I wish we would have gotten him on the second charge, but we didn't. And that's my jury duty story. After all these years of being political science major on the mock trial team, I had always wanted to serve on a jury. Always wanted to. And I finally got my chance, and I felt like, man, this was not what I was expecting. I expected to walk into that jury room, and I was kind of happy. I'm like, okay, cool. We're going to go in. We're going to knock this out. Guilty, guilty. Nope, that's not the way it played out at all. And I think we have television and a lack of understanding of how science works, or a lack of respect for science, to thank for that. So anyways, thank you guys for listening and watching. Please give it a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And we'll be back next time.